As a child, 3 beings left space-altering scorch marks on the field where I played. 15 years later, they're back and picking us off one by one. The wooden front door shakes in its frame. I can see 2 figures standing beyond the misted glass on the door. I take hold of the cold brass handle and open the door slowly. Are you allowed to come out to play? I'm about 7 years old. And it's almost 4 p.m., but it's not a school night. I swivel around on the spot and my mother nods at me. I barely put my shoes on before I'm falling out of the door and running over to the field in front of my house. The golden sun rays dance over the grass as we run, roll, and play. We go into the small wooded area. We find sticks and pretend to be knights. Do you give in yet, Sir Percy? A deadly wooden weapon being held up to my friend's neck. I will never surrender, Sir Lace-Lots. My beaten friend replies. We didn't know when to give up. We also didn't know the names of any of the Knights of the Round Table. We played for a few more hours. We were happy. Games changed from knights to aliens to explorers to astronauts. The genres all managed to flow into one another. The sun was beginning to set. The golden rays now transformed into a daring orange, casting the world into a fiery painting. We sat on the grass, facing the wooded area, backs to the houses, and we just talked. We didn't talk about anything important. We just talked about kid stuff. Who would win in a fight, or who could survive in space longest. I was chatting away to one of my friends. He and I must have been chatting for about 20 minutes. After a while, I noticed the friend on the end was sitting silently, eyes wide, watching the forest. Hey dude, are you okay? My friend remained frozen. I waved my hand in front of his eyes. My other friend blew on him. I shook his shoulders. He suddenly raised his arm, pointing directly towards the entrance of the forest. We followed his finger to where he was pointing. Amongst the old trees and broken branches stood 3 wispy black figures. The orange light of the sun seemed to be sucked into them like a black hole. Light appeared to bend around their outlines. We all went silent. I don't know how long we sat there, but the next thing I remember was the shouts of my mum from the house, and the sun had been swallowed by the night. I turned to my friends and just murmured something about going back in, and I would see them tomorrow. On reflection, they were still in the trance. The next day I went back out there. I knocked on the doors of my friends, and neither of them answered. I went back and got my sister. Admittedly, I was not a brave child. We wandered into the small wooded area, and as soon as I reached the entrance, the texture beneath my feet changed. The dirt had been scorched. 3 perfectly circular black scorch marks. I knelt down and picked up a few flakes of the ashen soil between my fingers. I remember my sister asking me what it was, and I told her it was just a natural formation. Truly, I had no idea what it was. Within about a meter radius of the scorches were branches and twigs, all bent towards the scorch marks, but not snapped. Fast forward 15 years. I haven't spoken to or seen my friends from that event in several years. We had sent the odd happy birthday message once a year and maybe said, have a good Christmas occasionally. 6 months ago, one of them died. It popped up on my social media feed. It was his mother. We are saddened to say that our boy has passed away due to an electrical fire in his home. Please, everyone have your electronics checked for your own safety. We appreciate all the kind messages everyone has sent, and we would like to invite any friends of his to the funeral next Friday. I went. I don't know why I went. I wasn't close to the guy anymore, and I didn't recognize anyone there. I was hoping maybe my other friend from childhood might be there, but he wasn't. The service was nice. His parents were a mess, of course. He had been an only child, and he hadn't had any uncles or cousins or anything. After about 10 minutes of standing around after the service, I went to leave. Some bearded guy, maybe 30, grabbed my shoulder, and I spun around. "Can I help you?" I said, perhaps too aggressively for a funeral. "You knew him as a kid, right? He talked about it all the time, that night. You know which one I'm talking about. I can see it in your eyes." I wanted to interject and tell him to fuck off, but he just kept talking. His body isn't actually in the coffin. There was nothing there. Everything was scorched, but he was the only thing completely gone. There was a circle in the living room. A black circle. Everything within a meter of it was warped. Warped but not broken. You know what I'm talking about. You've seen it. I could feel that my jaw had dropped. I still don't know how he knew all this. And before I could ask him how he knew all of the information, an older guy with a badge came over and grabbed him. "I'm so sorry. He managed to lock me in the waiting area and he just ran. We only let him out of the facility today because it was his brother who died. We think it's cruel to keep them locked up when it's a funeral. Sorry again." And with that, the two of them were off. I swear that my dead friend was an only child. Fast forward 6 months, to just 2 weeks ago. I get a handwritten letter through the post addressed to me. The writing looked scrawly, childlike. I opened the white envelope and it just had a crudely drawn section of a map with a postcode, date, and time written underneath it. Yeah, it was a fucking weird letter to get, but I googled the postcode and managed to find the section on Google Maps which matched the drawing. The date was the upcoming Wednesday at 1 p.m. The address wasn't far from me. It was a fairly small church. I rocked up in my blue jacket and black jeans and just sat in my car watching. After about an hour, I was getting ready to leave. Smash. The glass was launched all across the back of the car, some of it nestling its way into my arm. I turned around panicked. A brick sat, staring at me. A small note stuck to the side of it. "The scorch marks are coming." I wasn't sure what it meant. I kept the note, though. I reported it to the police and they just made me fill out some form and sent me on my way. I went home that evening. There was an almost complete scorch mark burnt into my living room floor. I scrubbed at it. I bleached it. I hoovered it. And I covered it in dye. But the scorch mark wouldn't go. Last Friday, it was fully formed and hot to the touch. I called an electrician. They had no idea what it was. I called my landlord. There was no reason the scorch should be there unless I had done it myself, they said. Yesterday, I woke up to another scorch mark beginning to form on the ceiling above my bed. Of course, I tried scrubbing that, too. Things have begun to shift. Space is bending around them. At night, I hear the distorted screams and the screeching of flames leaking out of the scorches. I've thought about running, but every time I go to leave, I feel a force pulling my body, atom by atom. I've pulled so hard that I've ripped muscle and skin, sending flesh flying back towards the scorch marks. I'm trapped, and the scorch marks want me. I can feel their bodies of void watching me. Will I become the third scorch mark?